5 members present. First is item 2.01, approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Susan, seconded by Marge, that we approve the agenda as printed. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next is 3.01, which is public comments and concerns. Did anyone sign up tonight? Okay. No one signed up for that?
No, well, I'm going to be on the agenda.
Yeah, you're on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to speak twice?
No. Well, maybe. We'll see how the first time goes.
We'll move on then to 4, which is reports and presentations. 4.01 is appoint a candidate to fill the USD 290 board vacancy. Did everybody on the board receive the resumes and letters of interest from the 4 candidates?
I received the letters of interest. I don't know if I saw the resumes.
Or some of them attached resumes, I think.
Yeah.
I think at least I've seen at least 3 of the candidates here. I don't know the 4th one, but what we're going to do is give each one of you a chance to come up and address the board, and we're going to go just alphabetically. So first, if Linda Alderman would like to approach the podium and address the board.
Hi, I'm Linda Alderman, and when I retired from teaching last spring, many people asked me if I was going to run for school board. I said I would when the elections came around in 2013. Sadly, this position is open now. I've lived in Ottawa for my entire life, except for a brief period from 1967 to 1978, when my husband and I were in school and also living in California. My children attended Ottawa schools, and I taught first grade in USD 290 for 31 years. I believe I would be a good candidate for this position at this time because as a former teacher, I can offer a unique insight and perspective to the board. As a retired teacher, I have the time to devote to this board. I also won't have to learn the alphabet soup of acronyms: MAP, MTSS, ELT, PDC, PLC, IEP, SIT. I know all that stuff. And I kind of know about the school budget process, so my learning curve should be slight. As a KNEA board member for 8 years, I've received excellent training in boardsmanship, and have also had the privilege of being in a Women in Leadership cadre for 2 summers. I keep up on legislative issues daily through emails, newsletters, and posts, and of course all of these relate to education. I also attend the monthly legislative coffees and personally know several area legislators as well as some throughout the state. I know it sounds cliche to say that we're all in this together, meaning the board and the staff, but we really are. And it's the board's job to make sound decisions that will carry us into the future, and I would like to be a part of that. Do you have any questions for me?
Are we doing questions?
If you have a question for the candidate, I think each individual can just ask them. Go ahead and ask them.
Give us one of the examples of something that's going on right at USD 290.
Right now in USD 290? Well, I do think there's an issue at Lincoln about space.
I said, what is right?
What is right about 290?
Not negative, what's
Okay,
right?
what is right about 290? Gosh, I think there's a lot of things right about 290. I think that we really do put the kids first, and we try to do our very best job to educate these children the best we can. I think we're looking at, I think the MTSS has really shown and proven to be valuable. The extended learning times have been valuable. The teachers have expressed positive thoughts about that. So I think all of that is really going in the right direction.
Okay, now you can answer the next question. What is an issue that you see as an issue?
I do think the space is an issue. I think that's a issue.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
Where do you want me to go with this, Dennis?
Where do you want to go with
Where do I want to go with this?
Because
Well, when I spoke in my prepared notes about looking into the future, I think that's something that the board needs to do. My husband's president of the co-op board, and I know Adrian, when he proposes something to the board, he has an entire spreadsheet Best case scenario, worst case scenario, looking way down the road. If things are perfect, this is what happens. If things go wrong, this is what happens. And from that, then they make a decision. And I think I would like to see the board do perhaps a little bit more of that.
Okay.
Okay? When I spoke of looking into the future, I think we need to do that.
Do we have other questions from any other board member? If not,
Okay,
thank you. Next up is Bill Alliger.
This is one of the few times I've actually been second in line alphabetically, so kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. I'm Bill Alliger. I'm a pharmacist here in town, been here for 30 years. I owned a couple of businesses for a while, sold out, got a lot of money, don't have any friends, but work for Walgreens now. Sorry, sold out to the man.
That's right.
I've previously served on USD 290 board. Enjoyed my work there. Met some wonderful educators, by the way. And got to see, I think, some of the ins and outs of what makes a school district go. I grew up in Lebo, Kansas, which isn't far from Linden, Kansas. It's a fine little community that takes great pride in its school district. People really get involved. It always amazes me that a school function in Lebo is attended by about the same crowd that we have attend a school function in Ottawa, even though it's a 1A or 2A school, depending on the year. I went to the University of Kansas, and I don't know if any of you know, KU won a game last night. We'll be going to the Final Four. Yeah, that was good news. I won't be going to New Orleans. I have to work. But I am glad that they're going. I am married to a young lady who works as a school social worker in the USD 333, which is Olathe. She provides me with unique insight into kids that aren't as fortunate, kids that maybe get dropped through the cracks occasionally, kids that don't get the respect of their peers or their educators sometimes. And I think that helps. That gives me a broader perspective than I would have otherwise. I'm seeking to serve on the board again, if you so choose, simply because I believe that public education determines what a community becomes. If we invest in public education, we will have a safe community, we'll have stronger families, we'll have economic development. If we don't do that, I think we all know what can happen. And I think Ottawa, as always, is at a crossroads. There's going to be development, strong development to our northeast. We're ideally located for growth. We've had some of that growth, and I understand that maybe Lincoln is bursting at the seams, but we've got to do some planning to take care of that growth, not only in terms of facilities, but also in our programming, and help guide these kids into their adult lives. Again, my interest in serving on this board, I don't have an axe to grind. I don't have anything that's compelling me to serve other than the desire to see that the youth of Ottawa get the best education they can, that we all pull together as a group, all educators, all administrators, all board members, and the community, and just make this a better place by doing so. And I would entertain questions.
You can ask the same
Bill,
questions.
what is right with USD 290?
Well, I think we have a wonderful board. I can't say enough about how great
As a
you guys are.
As a Waverly Bulldog, that's not going to work.
All right. I think there's a lot of good things. I think we've really upgraded in facilities. We've done some nice work there. We have a great staff, dedicated, that do more than is expected of them, I think. And I'm proud to say that I've served on committees and helped negotiate salaries with some really good educators. we've lost some educators. We've had some really good educators retire, but I've been encouraged by some of the younger educators that I've seen and heard about in our district. So staffing and facilities, I think we've made great strides. So I think those are two things that USD 290 is doing right.
And what is one issue that we need to approve upon?
I hadn't really thought about it. One thing I think we can always improve on is, as I referenced with my wife, is making sure that kids aren't falling through the cracks. I mean, it's cliched that no child left behind is you know, the federal program, but I would hope that that would be the motto also of our local board, that some child, because he's different, because he's new, because he wears gauges, because he's whatever, isn't ostracized, left out, because his learning style is different than we currently teach. I think we really need to reach out to all students and make sure that everybody has a fair chance.
Thanks, Bill.
Anybody else have any questions for Bill?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Next is Russ Wilson.
Good evening. My name is Russ Wilson. I wanted to be a part of the board because I've had two kids that started out and graduated out of the school system. In that time span, I've been involved in a lot of conversations and a lot of debates, if you will, about things that happen in the school system and what needs to happen. I've been employed at a cabinet company here in town for about 18 and a half years. 12 of those years have been in management and dealing with HR issues and such. Those are some of the things that I feel I have the opportunity to bring the board, is a fresh perspective on issues as well as a certain amount of perspective. Like I said, I do have a child that graduated from the high school in the alternative learning program, which I would echo Bill's statements on the fact that all children can't operate within the same classroom setting. And that program, I believe, gives children the opportunity to do that. Any questions?
What do you think is going right with USD 290?
What do I think is going right? I believe that USD 290 does go out of its way to try to accommodate and not leave any children behind. And I think that I know there was questions about HR and whether or not an HR position was suitable. And I think that having an HR person is invaluable because I know they were discussing having the secretaries do the HR function, which you cannot, without training, without knowledge. Doing HR issues are not something you want to do without training.
Follow-up question is, what is something that we need to improve upon in USD 290?
Something we need to improve upon. To tell you the truth, I really don't have anything that comes to mind as far as improving. I don't have a slate of everything in front of me, and I hadn't really thought about that issue.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Wilson? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And the last person is Harold Winger.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I'm a product of the USD 290 system and the educators. You can judge that in your own deal, but I think that's a valuable education. And Bill, whereas we're not playing, K-State's not playing in New Orleans, we are looking for a coach. So hang on to yours. We're going to be knocking. So anyway, you know, as I thought about the opening and the desire to serve, started back, you know, earlier this year when I addressed the board about the what I call rising student to teacher ratio. And it's ironic when Dennis asked me later tonight what a topic is, you know, we have a topic before us that indirectly is related to that. My years on COF board, I've served 8 years, the last 3 years as president, and 5 years total as president. We've learned that you have to think forward. For example, we were experiencing rising insurance costs. It was eating up about 15% of our budget for the employees. And we had made a mission to put clients first. And we heard that tonight already about students first, and I think the board's doing a good job with that. And you might ask, well, how does insurance affect the clients? And that simply is, without good insurance, you're not going to attract good employees. And so we formed a committee, and we had an insurance committee, but we expanded it. And we actually took a step back in our insurance policy, but we went to work thinking outside the box. And we said the step back in our coverage was a one-year decision. Our ultimate goal was to find a new method, because we looked forward into the future and we realized that we couldn't keep hitting double-digit increases in insurance. Came up, we're the first DD agency to have state coverage for our employees. So we went to work, we got put through, we got approved, and went through the qualification process as to why our agency qualified to be under the state health care. So we're January 1 of this past year, all COF employees are on the state insurance policy. So not only does it save COF money, but it guarantees us insurance in the future, provides great insurance coverage, indirectly then benefits our employees, which will help our consumers. So moving through the board, I think that you have a lot of opportunities. We look at COF, and one thing we say is change is inevitable. The rising cost of services, the decreasing tax dollars is something we're going to be facing. We've went through 8 years since I've been on the board, and we've always had a surplus of cash every year. So with that mindset, I'd like to serve the board, bringing that experience to the table. Questions?
Your turn again.
Harold, could
You
you?
have to be consistent.
Well, I just brought questions. I thought that was a good thing. Harold, could you give us an example of something that's good and right with the district?
You know, in thinking about it, I do think the way we educate our students and the progressive nature, the everyday math, the other policies you've instituted is bringing some new ways of educating, and it's thinking outside the box. It's asking, you know, could we keep going down the same path, but yet it's, you know, thinking outside the box. I know at first there was a lot of trepidation and, you know, that's change and what's that mean and the core, you know, is that something we really want to do as a district? And I think that as it's being implemented, we're seeing some of the results that you talked about in the future.
And then could you go ahead and follow up with the question, what is there that could be improved upon that you would believe that would be important?
You know, likewise, being part of this Friends of Public Education, one thing I try not to do is bring negative to the table. As you've noticed, we tried to be a positive impact of the students. So one thing that I would look at is I think we educate to the center okay. I'd like to see us educate to both extremes, to the, as we've already discussed tonight by a previous candidate or two, what are we doing with the people who don't learn the same rate as everybody else? And at COF, we don't say everybody needs to hit 100%. What we want to see is what's the measurement of growth that you see. So, for example, if you take somebody who's a little bit less functioning, and are they growing at their rate of what we call training services versus somebody who may have started out a little bit higher, and naturally they're going to score a little bit higher. But what I want to see is I don't really want to see what you score. I want to see the measurement of how much you improved. Second of all, I've already illustrated, you know, we have an issue at Lincoln. Yes, I rose before you in August and said, lower class size. No, I didn't have any solutions. So tonight you're discussing some proposals. One thing to do is, obviously you're trying to do that, is engage the people who are being affected. And, you know, talk to the teachers. One thing we're trying to do at COF, we implemented 2 years ago, is we don't ever make a policy the same night we discuss it. We don't take a vote unless it's a 911. And what that builds is trust. That means you can come as a board, openly discuss it, have your patrons who are going, whether it's parents, whether it's professional staff, that's going to be affected by it. They're going to hear your point of view, and they know that you're not going to vote tonight, something that may affect them. And that way it gives that dialogue some time. So as we kind of move forward, I think one thing the board could do is say to the patrons, yes, we're going to talk about this tonight. We may even throw a committee together, and we want a recommendation. And again, we threw the insurance committee together. We actually voted on their recommendation. And so we had buy-in day one, because what we did is we accepted their proposal. And so anyway.
Thank you, Harold.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'd like to thank all 4 of the candidates for being interested in this position and for coming out tonight to talk to us. This is an elected position, although it's being appointed tonight by the board, but it is an elected position. Therefore, our discussion about this has to be an open meeting, and we have to make our decision in open meeting. So this will not be something we do in personnel, so a little different, but I think we're lucky to have 4 real good candidates who have stepped up and are willing to serve. But at this time, we need to discuss the candidates, and then someone needs to make a motion for one of the candidates. So I'll open it up.
I asked the question, somebody else should start this.
I thought you were on a roll.
It's kind of an odd process to discuss in front of the candidates.
Discuss in front of the candidates that
Yeah,
they're.
but that's the Kansas Open Meeting Act, so that's the way it's going.
That's the way it works.
Like I said, I'll talk. I think that we have 4 really good candidates. I think they all have good ideas. I looked through their letters, and I looked at the resumes and the qualification they provide. I think we're real lucky that I think whichever candidate we choose, I think we're going to have a good person for the board.
No doubt about that.
We have a former teacher, which is going to obviously bring a ton of experience to the board. Been on the negotiations committee, and I think would be a good choice. We have a former board member who served 6 years on the board and who I know will do a real good job. We have Harold, who's been very involved with this school board since I've been on it, through the purchase of the old Hawthorne School, and then now forming this new group. And then the 4th person I did not know, but looking through his qualifications seems really good, and I'm impressed with what you had to say. I think they're all good candidates. I think, like I said, we're lucky. My personal preference at this point, I guess I would say, is I thought about this a lot. I'm kind of leaning towards Bill Alliger. He, like I said, was on the board for 6 years. He's done this. I think there'll be very little learning time therefore, because he can come right in, and we've got a lot of big issues here in the next month or 2 right off the bat, dealing with budget and trying to get that all set, and I think he might be the person that hits the ground running best. So that'd be probably my first choice, but I'm not opposed to any of the others, honestly. So,
Well, I'm not opposed to any of the 4, but I tend to agree with you. I think just because Bill has spent time on the board, I would tend to agree that he would be a good choice. They're all good choices.
yeah.
I think USD 290 is lucky to have people who want to be involved, and especially of this caliber. So I do tend to lean towards Bill just because of the financial problems that we continue to have, and we don't know where that's going either. I don't think anybody does in the state level either.
And I've even been on the board with Bill before, and I'm still for Bill. So that tells a lot. And that's a humor thing. And you'll understand later. I would like to make a motion that we appoint Bill Alliger as the new member of our board.
Second.
It's been moved by Marge and seconded by David that we appoint Bill Alliger to replace Daryl Bork as the new board member. Is there any further discussion? Do you have anything you wanted to say, Dennis?
No, I just think, with Harold's abilities on the FOPE group was very good, and I appreciate your comments as a new person that's had two students through the system. It's very difficult when you have a teacher who retired that brings an excellent asset to all four are good commitments, but Bill doesn't have anybody to worry about taking business away from him. So that's a good one too.
If there's no other discussion, all those in favor of appointing Bill Alger as the new board member, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Bill, and welcome to the board. And thank you very much to the other three people who showed interest. Like I said, I really believe we couldn't have gone wrong with any of the choices.
Yeah, they're all great.
So thank you so much for your interest in the position. Does he start next meeting? He doesn't get comfortable and sit
He
down
has to
now?
go in and get sworn in.
Yeah, you gotta go get sworn in.
I was very curious what Marge was going to say.
You're lucky that was it. Let me tell you.
Amen, sister.
She's not shy.
It's only beginning, Bill. Just wait. She's practiced.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to 4.02, the Journeys Reading Program update. Judy Kettle and Josh Robinson, if you guys would please approach the podium and give us an update on that.
There's a handout in front of you that
Judy's going to do most of the speaking. I've learned from previous presentations. I'll let the person who actually knows what's going on give the information. But I did want to real quickly introduce our cadre. A lot of them are here, and as you'll hear from her, they've done quite a bit of work in a real short amount of time to get to this point. And so just for the sake of time, I'd ask them to stand so I don't miss anybody. I know we had 3 representatives from Eugene Field, Carrie Curtis, Randy Helgett, and Laura Jenin. We had 2 from Garfield, I believe, Pat Skiles and Jackie Steelman, and then from Lincoln, Lori Snyder and Kara Corley, both 3rd and 5th grade, and then Lynn Ferguson's not here tonight. Am I missing anybody else? And Kim Fisher was our special ed rep. So we had representation from every school and every aspect that we could. But I'll turn it over to Judy to start with, and then I'll give you a quick rundown on what you have.
Thank you for your time this evening. Change is hard. It's harder for some of us than for others. The following is an example of change within my family. If I were to make a major change in my life, such as cutting my hair or the all-important what color should I paint my kitchen, it would take months of agonizing indecision. And throughout that process, I would certainly drag down and drive away all of my friends and family members. And in the end, I might do nothing at all. My husband, Dean, is the opposite. If change is needed, he does it and says, "Get on with it." By the time my daughter was 2 years old, she had never seen Dean without a full beard. Indeed, he had sported one for several years. In typical form, without mentioning the possibility to anyone, one hot summer day, Dean went into the bathroom 15 minutes before dinner and shaved it all off. He came to the supper table with a clean-shaven face. 2-year-old Annie looked across the table and said, "Too much change." Most of us have had that feeling at some time or another. This has certainly been a big year of change for USD 290. I work primarily in the elementary buildings, so I will speak from that perspective. For this population, the following major changes have occurred in this 1 year. The closing of Eisenhower, new principals and leadership in each building, the implementation of MTSS, the implementation of Ames Webb, the loss of Dr. McCauley as our visionary literacy leader, and the adoption of a new basal reading series. Teachers have large classes and more children than ever with special needs. Add the above changes to an already changing job, and you have a tall order to fill. I am with your teachers and in their buildings every day, and I'm here to tell you they are an incredible staff. They pretty much roll up their sleeves and get to work. They cheerfully come to work each day and put the needs of those kids first. When I was hired 4 years ago as a literacy coach, I was asked to help implement CALL and Reader's Workshop, both research-based programs of the highest quality. I was absolutely in awe of Ottawa teachers. The level of professionalism, commitment, and dedication was astonishing. Dr. McCauley had a vision and expectation for teaching excellence that she supported, drove, and made happen. and Ottawa teachers rose to that expectation. Last year, with the implementation of MTSS, data proved beyond a doubt that we had some serious gaps and holes in our literacy program that had to be addressed sooner, not later. We were lacking a sustainable core curriculum that was consistent district-wide. Simply put, that means we needed a curriculum that provided every child access to a strong and sequential literacy foundation, no matter which teacher or which building he or she experienced. Therefore, a reading series was purchased and implemented. It's important to note that Dr. McCauley clearly saw the need for this and fully supported the change. Was the process for selection of this series perfect? No, it was not. No one expected the loss of Dr. McCauley or that Mrs. Schweinler would leave. In a perfect world, several years would have been devoted to this process with study, reflection, and plenty of teacher input. The reality is there was not that much time. A problem existed, a decision was made, and the vast majority of teachers have willingly dug in and made it work well. And we are moving forward. The biggest problem with the Basel reading series is that it's too much of a good thing. If the kids were in school 6 days per week until dinner time and stayed during the summer months, we might get it all done. But since that scenario is not likely, we have been working hard to pare Journeys down to its essentials. A group of 12 members was formed as a cadre to help study and implement Journeys. If you ever need a job done, hire this crew. They represent all 3 schools, all grade levels, and a variety of years of experience. They are a positive, constructive, and hardworking committee that has accomplished more in 1 year than most committees do in 3. With the expertise of Lori Winter, an independent reading consultant who is incredibly knowledgeable in the area of literacy, the cadre is working hard to identify the non-negotiable elements of Journeys that we need and that teachers are expected to teach. At the same time, the cadre is working to integrate these elements of Journeys into existing reading and practice and knowledge that has taken us years of training and experience to acquire. By the end of this year, there will be a set of written guidelines in the hands of every teacher that they can take home over the summer. It will clearly define expectation and procedures for the next year. These guidelines will be aligned with principal walkthroughs and evaluations. This will provide needed clarity, consistency, and understanding of purpose. This entire process, combined with a lot of other circumstances, has been hard. But I can say that we have grown and are all better for the work we have done. All districts are struggling with these same issues. We are actually ahead of many of them in that we made a decision and we're moving forward. I have complete confidence that in the not distant future, we will be better than ever with a reason to be proud of what we teach our children in the area of literacy and reading. Thank you.
What you all have in front of you, and I apologize, we didn't make the packet. And so Judy and I would both offer, if as you get a chance to look closer to it, and there's a few other things we'll send electronically to you as well. We've had other groups of teachers working on things like motions for the Alpha Friends, which is something we had with Animated Alphabet that we really liked. This series didn't have it. Charts that we used in the guided reading that we had from Call that now we've, Dana Bridges, I saw Dana here somewhere, I'll give Dana credit. Dana did a great job of helping put some of those pieces together. I think from a principal standpoint, seeing our coaches and our teachers come together to really to make this work. One of the challenges we've had with Journeys is that there aren't really experts with it. It's such a new series that there's very few districts working with it, and those that have used it longer than we have are so far away that really getting good information from them or sending people to see them isn't realistic. And so the experts we have to work with are the people that are working with it every day. I would tell you that what we have is a draft. It will probably be a draft for several years. So my vision for what you have in front of you is something that will grow, will be added to it. We'll make adjustments as our teachers use it because we're still learning. We're still learning what it looks like, what it should look like in our classrooms for our kids. Some of the big things we've done that I know when we talked to you all at the board retreat, we mentioned some of these things. We've tried to pare down the whole group piece of it. The whole group piece in a lot of cases was taken 45 to 50 minutes. with the help of Lori Winter, looking at what's developmentally appropriate, what's best practice. We've tried to pull the pieces out of there that are key elements that we have to have, all of our kids have to have access to, and trying to maximize our 90-minute block so that we're spending more of it in small group instruction, because we really know that's where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. The small group piece is probably the piece still in the works. We just worked with Lori, with our cadre, right before spring break, looking at a couple of other options for how to adjust the small group piece. And I think Judy's got a good recommendation in there for you all to look at, and for our cadre to kind of sort through at our next cadre meeting. But that'll be our next big piece to make sure we're firm on what we want it to look like. She presented some information that our cadre members have taken back and tried in their classrooms, and hopefully will be able to give us good feedback on what that looks like, and how it fits, if it's doable. We want something that's realistic and that's going to allow us to get the most out of our kids. The other big change, there was a lot of discussion when Journeys came in about giving our kids time for more independent reading, more authentic writing, more choosing text on their level, and closer to almost a Reader's Workshop format, because there were some really good pieces from Reader's Workshop at the intermediate level that we kind of lost when we moved into Journeys. Part of what we're really shifting to as we look at that independent work time when they're not with a teacher directly allows us to do a lot of those things and to get those pieces in without giving up important pieces of Journeys. So overall, I'm happy with the product that our cadres come up with. I think our teachers will be. Our plan moving forward is to use some of our PLC time in April to start getting grade levels together and getting that information out to them. And then Judy's already been working on, a lot of these decisions are based on current things coming out from Common Core or from experts in the field of reading. And so our hope would be to utilize our PLCs a little bit differently next year and pull in some of the articles showing teachers not just what we want them to do, but why we made some of those decisions, and trying to build that understanding. That these weren't just things that a group of people sat down and said, we thought this would look good, but there was really some good research behind it. The other thing I would mention to you, we've also taken a look at Common Core pretty heavily, and taken a look at the Sunflower Literacy Project, which is the new state literacy plan, to try to tackle some of those issues that all schools across the state are trying to figure out what to do with the Common Core. Specifically some of the text complexity pieces, which is a big push from Common Core. We're taking the approach here that the state's literacy plan is taking in their plan, and hoping that that will allow us to keep our system moving and not have to change direction when the state presents their plan this summer. So there's a lot of things that we've tried to mesh together. We know next year as we get to using it that we'll get feedback from our teachers and continue to work with this cadre and make adjustments. But I think we're in a much better spot going into next school year than we were this year. Do you all have questions?
You said that the buy-in is getting a lot better. I mean, are you finding the teachers now that they've been into it, almost 1 year into it now, that it's being accepted more and it's being followed, applied across the district?
I think my take, the building I'm in, I think our teachers from day one have jumped in. I'm not saying it was their favorite thing from day one, but they've really dove in and tried to make it work. I think with some of the changes that we're making, I think even some of our teachers that haven't completely bought in, it's because of real specific things that they weren't able to do. And not that we're going to solve all of those or be able to go back completely to where we were, but I think we're finding kind of that happy medium and giving our teachers that have some expertise in reading the ability to use that with Journeys as a resource rather than Journeys being our whole driving tool, and you can't deviate at all from it. I mean, we talked with you all a little bit about that pendulum swing, and that we were at a point last year where we had complete freedom for our teachers in their classroom to kind of choose what they wanted to use. And when you switch to a basal, and we hit Fidelity really hard in the fall, we went complete opposite side of it. Our hope with these guidelines is that we end up somewhere in the middle, that we're allowing our teachers to use their expertise and their training, but at the same time, we're putting some of those non-negotiables in that we really need to see these things to make sure our kids are all getting the same consistent approach to literacy instruction.
And that's what I was wondering. So a person in kindergarten in Lincoln is going to be getting the same basic skills the person in Eugene Field and Garfield kindergarten.
Yeah, and I think if you look at our cadre makeup, part of what we tried to do when we put that group together is we've got some teachers who have been a part of the reading committee process for many years. And at the same time, we tried to bring some people on board who were newer to the profession or newer to the district, because our hope in writing these guidelines was to write them in a manner that any teacher stepping into their classroom, whether it's a first-year teacher or a teacher who's been doing this for a really long time, could take a look at these and know this is kind of what's expected of me. And I think our hope, as Judy alluded to, is to tie our PLCs, our walkthroughs, evaluation. It'll really help, or is already helping from a coaching standpoint. She's able to use these just to give teachers a clearer understanding of what we want to see in classrooms when we go in. So I think it puts us in a much better spot for long term.
Does anybody else have any questions? No. Thank you both very much for
Thanks for all
presenting
the
to us.
hard work.
Appreciate it. Okay. 4.03, building space, Terry Howard.
I'm kind of short. Good evening. I'm Terry Howard, one of the Title I reading teachers at Lincoln Elementary. I have been teaching for 32 years. Some say that makes me an expert in my field, and others say she's probably past her prime, but no matter. The perspective, I still have the weight of experience behind me. Here's my look on this matter of saving our group rooms at Lincoln School. I remember the construction of the building. I remember the promises given to the public, a state-of-the-art building designed to last throughout the 21st century. I remember the input educators had in the design of the building. I remember the sheer beauty of the rooms and the space where none had been before at the old Lincoln. But as the school year began, I remember that many of those suggestions given by staff were being discarded. I remember the closets, one by one, being remodeled for added, vitally needed staff. The small conference rooms are now a sped room and an office for itinerant math and reading staff. Lockers are shared, mostly not, but a few are shared by students. One conference room by the office is used continually by sped ed, MTSS leadership teams, student success teams, other things. But as a staff, we adapted, and we made the best of it, because that's who we are. At Lincoln, we are dedicated, creative, and in the business of educating children. We accepted the Hawthorne staff and the Eisenhower staff with open arms. We also accepted a bigger caseload. But we again adapted. But now we are no more willing to sacrifice instructional excellence for mediocrity. No more are we willing to give up an instructional tool, space, our group rooms. If you receive my letter, you will remember what our group rooms are used for, but I will state some of the other uses that we have. Differentiated instruction, small group, one-to-one instruction, presentations, meetings, MTSS extended learning times, dentist visits, pictures, recesses, bus, sibling after-school gathering, probably many more that I don't even know. They're being used continually. And I know as you ponder the problem of more classrooms for students, I want to remind you that taking away more instructionally from the classroom is, metaphorically speaking, digging yourself another hole. The last few years have been hard with programs and staff, and I know you've agonized over many tough decisions. Lincoln staff has risen to the challenge of instructing students with the tools at our disposal. But more is not always better. More children mean less space for individualized instruction. With less space, less quality evaluations for staff because we only have one principal. Simply can't do it all. More discipline problems, and I say it will lower morale. Here are my suggestions for trying to maybe not take our group rooms. One, why don't we have an elevator and take the naughty children upstairs? That's a joke. Or I really think the idea of a fourplex mobile unit at Eugene Field is a good idea because this school desperately needs more quality space. If the group room is made into classrooms, then this building will lose an instructional tool needed to help our children. What's next? The gyms, the art room, the music room? Please consider carefully the impact your decisions make on children and staff alike. We are the professionals, and I, for one, would like to have you listen to our voice and have it be considered strongly. And I invite you to visit and shadow one of our grade levels. We would love to have you come over and see what happens in our building so that you can make a more informed decision. Space is an instructional tool. And I think in my letter, I said adding more children, cutting down on space is going to make us look like canned sardines. And how is that going to attract businesses when they come and see how cramped we are? We have a building that is fairly new. Why do we want to take it back to the 1960s? We want to showcase our best schools. And right now, with the group rooms, Lincoln is one of our best schools, and we have made it for our children that we have. And we would like to continue doing the work that we're doing in the best possible way with the space. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 4.04, board reports. Does anyone have a board report for us this evening?
I do. I went to the ORC meeting last Wednesday, and this will be very brief, but one of the things that I was glad to hear that they have had the chief of police come in and do some emergency evacuations at different times during the evening, during the daytime, during the time when they had camp there, things like that. So a lot of the kids have had an opportunity to experience what an evacuation would look like. The staff has also, and I was glad to see that they were updating that.
That was the police that was doing that, not the fire?
Well, I thought the police, but.
Well, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I could see both being involved.
Well, evacuation and not just fires, but in
emergencies,
things like that. Where to go, well, tornadoes, and then where to go if someone was there with a gun and that kind of thing. And so I was glad to see that. We also got a report that American Eagle, again, still yet has been giving, almost every time I make a report, they have given something else to ORC. They've given a couple of more treadmills, a couple more other machines.
Oh, wow.
And that's really good to see and they do a lot with when the school's out with those kinds of activities and crafts and all of that. And that is housed in one of the ORC buildings a lot of the time. Sometimes not. Sometimes they go out there to do it. They met with the Wellsville ORC, or whatever they call their equivalent, and they found out that they were there to learn, and actually they were put in the position of they were learning from our people of how things were working so well. So they were kind of a turnabout there. They didn't really realize that was going to happen, but that says a lot for the staff that's there. And I think that is probably, oh, no, the one important thing I thought was the company or parent company of the builder, the metal building itself, not the builder, but the metal building, they have asked permission, and it was granted, and they've taken pictures, and I'll pass these around, of a night picture and a day picture. They are going to put this in a national magazine showing people across the United States what can be done with metal buildings, whether or not metal pole barns and all of that, and to use the metal. And so we, Ottawa, ORC, will be in a national magazine in the future. And I thought that was a very good advertisement for the success of everything that has happened with ORC.
Great report, Marge. Thank you.
Anybody else have one?
Dean, as you know, the computer wasn't working, but the replacement for Daryl on the
ORC.
ORC, the Teen Inc. thing, has that been?
I volunteered.
Okay.
I just haven't heard when you
Tommy,
showed.
he hasn't got a hold of you yet.
Okay.
When I see him, but yeah.
But that was another thing that came up, and so.
Yeah, we had talked to Tommy.
I'm just waiting on hearing from him when he needs me, but I'll send him an email too.
Okay.
Anyone else have a report? All right, then we'll move on to 4.05, the superintendent report.
Okay, first thing I want to talk just a little bit about is the memorandum of understanding with Neosho County on adult ed. We're working on that now, and at the next meeting, we should be ready to approve that. I guess the highlights of that, I did add a section today, number 7 under section 1, that just states that we'll have all the budget information that we need, since it'll still run through us with the mill levy, the half a mill. It has to be part of our budget too, that they'll provide that information by the 4th Monday of July each year. And then the obligation that what we would pay them is the $58,200. That's what the mill levy produced this year. And if that changes either way, what we would do if it produced more, either reduce the mill rate, I mean, make a little cash balance in there, reduce the mill levy a little bit, but instead of saying a half a mill, that'll be the amount, because we can't go down, I mean, with maintenance of effort, but this will be the figure that we work from now on. And we won't have to get into the in-kind donation things with, you know, building rental, technology help, those types of things. So, but we'll have that and should have it ready for the next board meeting. School finance, I did attach.
Does balances stay with us, or do those get transferred under the?
Do what?
Are the balances, any cash balances that we got, does that stay with us?
They'll stay with us, what we have, and I don't know, Terry, do you remember?
Right now, I believe we've probably got about 35,000, but because
So-
it was generated.
That would help us streamline
yeah.
the mill levy and things,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you have anything else on that?
No.
On school finance, I have several things up, and Kim, if you just want to, if you can find the Senate summary, Senate Bill 220 summary, that,
Is that thing gonna blow?
I don't know. This, this pretty well sums up what all of the things that we've had, and there for a while, I mean, it was every hour that would change, and I believe this came from the 21st, yes. And I haven't heard anything more. This is moving through Senate and House. But Bay State aid per pupil would go from $3,780, which it is this year, to next year, $3,854. And then in 2013-14, it would go up to $3,928. And I hope this passes. We've asked for years about getting at least a 2-year plan so we could budget and do the things financially, so we're not always having to worry about, well, what are we going to cut if they do this or that. So I do like the way that this is looking. It looks like we may actually see on Bay State aid per pupil some more dollars brought into the system. And as far as supplemental general fund or the local option budget, this year, you could go up to 31%. Ottawa's at 30%. Actually, I think a little bit below that right now. But if we wanted to go up to 31% next year, you'd have to have an election. It's not just up to protest. It would have to be an election. 2012, 13, it could go to 32%, and 13, 14 the same, or up another percent to 33. In each one of those scenarios, that it would have to go to an election and be passed for that to happen. Supplemental general state aid, right now, it's at the 85.7% what we get what we get in state aid. Based on that much of the total budget, next year it would go up to 92.5% of this year, or next year's entitlement for supplemental general, and then 2013-14, 100%, which would be huge in a way that it could, I can't say would, it could, depending on valuation, there's all kinds of things that play into that, but it could lower our mill levy in supplemental general. What they projected be like $1.5 million if everything stayed the same, but we're a long ways from that. So anyway, I really like this plan, and all of the information is attached on both the public and site that shows how many dollars Ottawa would receive, and it would be $241,000 approximately. That's based on all the figures staying the same for next year. Any questions or anything there? I mean, we're getting a little bit closer. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I do appreciate our legislators. I think every one of our legislators supported this and have done a really good job. And I've been communicating with them, sending thank yous, and really appreciate what they've done. So,
Dean, just to make sure I understand correctly, you've got it says that if the base state aid per pupil is not funded at $38.54, then it will state supplemental general is not prorated at 92.5% of the prior year's enrollment. The law reverts back to the current year.
correct.
So that's at the state if the legislature doesn't fund it at that level.
Doesn't fund it, exactly. If the legislators don't do the supplemental general state aid entitlement at 92.5 next year and 100% in 13-14, it would revert back to the current. I mean, it's kind of a stick to hold them accountable for that. And the reason that's in there, it would be a property tax relief measure. I mean, where a lower LOB or our property or mill levy, we assess for local option budget. So, like I said, I'm glad it's in there, that it kind of holds them that if they want to fund it, then they have to do both. Lower the property tax theoretically, but again, it depends on valuations and all of those things. But so I like it.
So where does this one stand in terms of passage?
It is going through. The Senate passed it. House is doing it, looking at it now. I don't know if I don't know when they vote on it, but it's, I think, going to pass similar to the way it is, the way this shows at the House. The Senate did pass it, so.
Okay.
And being debated more, but it's so far from what we started with. I'm really pleased with it. Virtual school, we're working on the guidelines for that. We will meet this coming Wednesday to discuss those. Brenda Cummings, Ryan Cobbs, and myself will start going through that process of getting those things out to the board members or all of you to look at, and we'll start considering, and we'll be comparing some other districts and see what direction we're going to go. But again, I'm excited about that. I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities for kids. I think several of the candidates tonight talked about what can we do for kids and not let them fall through the cracks. I think this is going to be a great alternative too for some. So I'm excited about it. A couple upcoming events. Mayor's Prayer tomorrow morning, 7:30 at Westminster Church. Eggs and Issues, I think I talked to everyone about that on April 19th. I do have tickets to give you if you're planning on going. And then Quarterly Emerings Awards are April 11th, 11:45. And I have Susan, myself, and did you say, Marge, or were you going to get back? You thought you had.
And what day was that?
That was on April 11th. I didn't write you down, so you must not have told me. But
No, I think not.
yeah, I think you had a conflict. Anybody else for any of those things? And if you are, let me know. And that is
And the
my
prayer,
report. Yeah.
tomorrow morning's prayer breakfast, is that a ticket or thing, or?
I had put you down, Marge, so for you and I to go. So. I don't have a ticket, no, so we'll show up.
Show up. Okay.
All right, thank you. 5, policies, contracts, bids, estimates, agreements, and other business. 5.01, discuss the elementary space issues.
Okay, let me pull up. We did gather, well, first let me start by talking about Jane Heisman, who was the architect from Gould and Evans that came down and worked with us, she is going to be here also on Wednesday, and we're going to sit down and review that information and start talking about some long-range planning and how to deal with some of the issues that we have, especially at the elementary schools. And the first look we had when she was here, we talked about middle school and high school and all of that, but I think we're going to focus on elementary when she's here and try to come up with a plan, and we'll be presenting that as we go. She had come up with, we'll talk about it a little bit here. She had come up with some numbers that we had used when we started that planning about the standard, what USD 290 was going to use for kindergarten numbers, what our standard would be. Not that this is the policy, but at that time we said 18 in kindergarten, 20 students in grades 1st through 4th, 22 in the 5th grade. And then she also came up with what the building maximum would be in each one of the buildings. And obviously we don't have any in Eisenhower right now because we closed that and had the kids move. But at that time the maximum was 120. Eugene Field, currently we have 280. Her estimate on the maximum was 258. Now, some of the things she didn't consider the pre-K space, some of the special spaces in there, but just as far as looking at regular classrooms, her maximum was 258. Garfield, we currently have 398 students. The maximum she had was 360. Lincoln, 541. The maximum 478. Now, this 541 includes the what do we have, 36 pre-K kids, and then some of the special classrooms and things. So, but those were the numbers that she had come up with, and we'll be bringing that back through her studies and look and see how we can help some of these things. But I thought that was something we needed to look at. But like I said, she's going to be here Wednesday, and we'll start that process. Richard did some work on different options then. We had talked about the what it would cost to remodel the 2 rooms. And Kim, do you want to pull up, I think this should be on there, as far as the large group room, I don't know if that's how it's, yes, Lincoln large group room. Pull up that map if you would. But what he did was had a couple of contractors look at wiring. Huh, sorry.
It's attached.
It's attached, it's there.
It's not just,
It's on the private.
Okay, well, you guys have it, but
Yeah.
So it's one
it's
big-
not going to do any good to hold it out. But what it shows is the normal size of a Lincoln classroom is 31 and a half feet by 23.3, and to make that space into another classroom, it wouldn't take the whole room. I mean, it would take about 2/3 of it. You'd still have a space 27 feet by the 23 that could be used for something else. The cost of remodeling that would be about $17,800. And you'd still have permits, you'd still have other things, but that was just an estimate on the cost.
Was that
Per
per
room?
class, or?
No, that was
For both?
both, yeah, because you do a wall and then, some wiring, you'd have to do those things. Now, I have down a little bit lower here, furniture cost. What we had to furnish a room would be, I would say, about $9,000 for furniture in each room. And that would be pretty much everything that you would need there. And it may be a little less there because I believe, is there a smart board and in one of the, but you'd probably want it in the other side too. So anyway, that's what it would cost to.
What did you, I'm sorry, I just, my brain fried for a minute there.
Yeah.
What did you say the cost would be for the actual
the actual remodel to put a wall up in there and then put the doors on would be about $17,800.
And that gives you 2 classrooms.
That would give you 2 classrooms.
Plus
But that's,
2
but
of
that's on each end, right?
One on
17,000 on
each
one
end.
end, 17,000 on the other end.
No, I think that was for, let me see what he says here. And Richard had a family emergency surgery, not him, but a family member, so.
Because I thought it was like a total for like 36,000. I thought that was, I read that somewhere.
I hate to ask, but could we put this in a spreadsheet so we can see what our costs are, so we know for a budget, like, so we know what we're actually spending and what we're doing? Because 17,000, after hearing the presentation tonight, I'm very reluctant of doing it that way, because especially when I have an educator who thought a quad would be a excellent idea, I'd hate to lose that space and change the room.
No, I think that would be for both, the price for both, 17 for each one. But that also comes then, and I know there's other issues then that we would deal with if we went that route. At Lincoln, adding, it would roughly would have 600 kids there, and there's just no way we could have a school that big with 1 counselor, 1 principal, and those things. So we would be looking at adding staff into that scenario as well, which would cost, let's see, roughly an assistant principal and a counselor roughly make, this is with benefits and everything, about $60,000. So you would be looking at
An additional
each
120.
120 to add staff to that building. Overall, I mean, I'll just be short and blunt here. I don't think that's a good educational choice, but it was something that we wanted to look at dollar-wise and see what options were out there.
Okay.
Now,
Just
go ahead.
before we go on,
Mhm.
just as I'm listening here, okay, so we're at roughly $132,000 to put a wall in the group room, lose the instructional space there, plus add the counselor and administrator. We're at roughly 160 some odd thousand for a used one, or 260,000 for a new quad. What additional costs would be to go into the quad to make it usable for Eugene Field?
What we would look at, furniture, roughly $9,000. That's everything included for that.
So that would be a wash for either one, so in either
Right.
case.
The furniture would be, as far as computers, if we did something at Eugene Field and had that space available, we could either use the wireless cart that, I don't think you use it now, Shannon.
They're attempting to, but
It's still, they don't use it much.
Wi-Fi like it needs to if they're trying to use all 25 at once, 'cause we don't.
But we would wire that in hard into that room and use those computers, and I think when we're replacing computers and all that would be in the bid, but for what I'm saying is we have computers available to put in there, we wouldn't have to do that. Now, we would have cost on the desk, that's part of the furniture that I was talking about. Another scenario would be if we don't have our TAP program at the high school, that means where it's housed next year, and I'll have a presentation on that at the next meeting as well. The numbers that Ottawa has in there are dwindling. I think we have 3 students of our own, and then everyone else comes from out of district. And we're in the process of working with Eudora and Greenbush about having that program probably at Eudora. And if we had the need, I mean, right now we send students to Lake Mary and different places, so it wouldn't be any different than that. But when you look at the number of personnel and just everything that we do for our 3 students compared to everyone else. Now, we do charge, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it would be much simpler just to not do that. And honestly, with MTSS and all the things we've made in special ed, the changes that we're not seeing as many kids have that need to go to that program. But I'll do a report on that at the next meeting. But if we didn't do that, we could move one of those modulars from the high school over there. And the estimate on that would be, with remodeling it into more of an elementary, if you left the one there and remodeled it, that would be roughly $47,000 to move it and remodel it, and again, would have permits to do.
Two classrooms? Or one?
There would be 2 classrooms there.
2 for the top one and 2 for the existing one.
Right. There would be four
So there would be the
rooms
4.
there.
But we'd have to remodel the existing one too.
Correct.
96,275.
That's what I got. I don't.
Yeah.
That's if we purchase this other double. That's a whole different scenario. If you look at the second
Oh, I thought
page.
It's a different double, not the double we got.
No. That's a whole different one if we purchased it. We didn't know the tap one, would be available, but, the existing modular would cost, roughly $31,000 to remodel.
Can I just ask, could we see this on a spreadsheet so we know what all our options are?
As soon as I get all the
Captain's
scenarios
spreadsheet has
out there and
spoken.
what you wanna.
Well, I just think I heard it from one of our potential elected officials that we're gonna appoint tonight. It'd be good to be able to have the sheet so we can say to our constituents, this is what we're doing and why. And I'm just uncomfortable saying we're gonna do this if we do this. And the other question is, Dean, if we move to the quad, are we adding any staff when the 4 units go to Eugene Field? On one report, it said, yes, we are, on the bottom of it. So the question I have in that spreadsheet, what staff are we adding if we do this move?
And we talked about last time, coming back after enrollment or kindergarten roundup, which is next week, and having those numbers and then coming back with these things all hopefully figured out. We can do the formula we use on kindergarten roundup to see how many kids we have. If we don't have 230 kindergartners anticipated to enroll next year, then no, we wouldn't have to. And we can get down to the class sizes.
But I think I missed my point. The point that I have is regardless of our class size, if we're gonna make moves of anything to Eugene Field, can we see our costs on a spreadsheet so we can compare them as we go
Yeah,
across?
apples to apples to
Apples and
oranges.
apples, because again, we're talking about this much for a classroom, this much here, this much if we add this person. Because again, on Josh's report, it said we'd add 1 FTE.
Right.
When we did the quad, it said 1 FTE. I just want to see a spreadsheet that when, if Terry calls me up and asks me a question, I can say, here's the numbers.
Yeah.
If we had this information today, so that's why it's,
Right.
if you
Yeah.
noticed, it was attached today on Richard's numbers with spring break and him being gone tonight, but,
Where did we?
that's where we got.
But since coming on the board, space has been an issue.
Do
And
what?
it's good. Since coming on the board, I don't know, Dennis, since you and I have been on the board, space has been an issue.
Right.
And we've talked about what do we do for the short term, what do we do for the long term, and we don't want to negate what are promises we've made in terms of not putting more modulars, and so we've got to kind of balance all that.
And we need to bring out the old plan that we left with Jane and revisit that. But even on this, I think we need, what I heard, and again, please correct me if I was wrong, at the minimum this summer, we must improve the modular that's currently at Eugene Field. So that is a must. Is that what I heard or
It's
not?
the bare bones minimum of what we
So
have
on a
to do.
spreadsheet, I would say we have a must with the budget here.
Yeah, that's the
Then
worst
if we
case
go
scenario.
to 2, and if we go to a quad, and if we then move the other one, what's our cost? And then we have a staffing column. What are we gonna do for the staffing? And
That
then
was,
here's
that was
the-
gonna be one of my questions, is okay, if we go to a modular that's a quad, tell me again what was gonna go in there, cause it's been a while, I slept since then and I can't remember.
If we had if we
We
went
go
to
to
a
if we
quad.
were, if
Goes
we
in
put in
that
a
building.
quad.
If we had, a computer lab would be in one,
Okay.
and the other's contingent on what numbers we have for kindergarten.
So in other words,
Classrooms.
Classrooms.
there'd be a computer lab and 3 open spaces.
There's
No,
two classes that are already in the modulars there right
Right.
now.
That's what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get
What's
buys
in the
you-
modulars now, and let's move from there, please.
Correct. We have both of our second grade classrooms out in the modular right
So
now.
second grade would stay in the modulars,
Stay in theory, yes.
and you'd add a computer lab,
And you'd add one more classroom.
When we have,
and
At
a,
this point, it would allow for growth in case that kindergarten
In-
is 200,
okay. That
like
or-
we have seen over the course of the last few
Yeah.
years. we have
Thank
seen
you.
kindergarten.
that's
Right
what I was
now-
trying to get to.
Yeah.
And I think our point in doing that too at Eugene Field is we would then have 3 sections of kindergarten, because that's what we currently have. Then that would allow for us to continue to have 3 sections of first grade, so we can be kind of that influx, because right now, Lincoln doesn't have that extra space, and we're living in flux every year, deciding where are we gonna ship these kids to a different school, really large classes.
So then what, in your mind, okay, yeah, I see the need for the flux at first grade. Then do you go ahead and squeeze them down to 2 sections for second grade?
That's what typically our district has been doing.
So we're squeezing at the second grade level?
Correct.
Okay.
And
We're
Dean,
gonna keep class size lower at kindergarten level.
and could we actually, I know
That's
we've
what I
seen a
wanted to
lot
know.
of graphs, could we see a graph on, and again, we put it in different ways and different techniques, but a real clear-cut graph of, okay, here's our class sizes. If we do the quad, this is what they could be, and really progress it out. Because I look at the averages that was shared, and I went back through a lot of these minutes. We're not that far off on our projections in the squeeze time until we justify a new building. And then when you saw the article in the Lawrence paper, they're substantially higher. And again, I'm not advocating that, but I just think if I have it on a spreadsheet, then if Harold hits me up on the highway asking me what's going on, I could actually show the numbers. And again, we've shown it in a few different ways, but you just answered it very clearly to us. We have 2 classes there that will stay, and then the next class would be open and a computer room.
And we also,
More after kindergarten roundup, I'm sorry. After kindergarten roundup, we move that up, so then hopefully we can make a more educated decision about what we're doing with those kids, and how many kids we have coming.
But at minimum, we've got to improve the two unit, no matter what.
Yes, the floor
Right,
is
so that's a $31,000 expense regardless.
and we have to keep in mind, when we started way back to make bond issues, the whole purpose was equity.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is, we're pretty happy if the inequity is at the other school. But if the inequity is at my school, then I don't want it to happen. But we are in charge of all the schools, and we have to make sure the equity is as best that we can have. We also are going back on promises that we've made the public about modulars. And so if you didn't hear that promise, it probably doesn't mean anything to you. But if we made that to you, then it probably means a whole lot to that person.
But it does mean to me. 'Cause
No, I mean
the
to
public.
Joe Blow or whoever we made the promise to, and they remember those promises. Equity is the issue. That's why we closed Hawthorne. That's why we closed Eugene Field, because of the budget cuts and all that. But that was the start why we closed Hawthorne, is to get equity. It is not equitable for kids to walk in the rain from the main school of Eugene Field out to the modulars. That might be the best case scenario that we can do presently, but we have to keep in mind, we have equity for all of the kids, not just one group.
And I think we need to bring back our process and start
Yes,
again.
I do
Because
too.
again, if we're hearing that our classes are tight and we could potential grow, again, it all depends on the intermodal and how that affects us and other economic development. But I think we need to go back and revisit that plan, because as you shared last time, Marge, as you agree, and again, bricks and mortar in our long-range plan was have equity in all the schools, not just throw up another
Right, and the
module.
programs that are available and all of that.
And for me, this raises more questions than it answers. Just because I'm fuzzy about where everything is and how all the expenses will be covered and what the long-term cost of doing business is going to be, so.
I wasn't here on this board when it was promised that there'd be no more modulars, but I completely agree with that. To me, at a school district this size, this day and age, we shouldn't be teaching kids in trailers. But the problem is that the economy tanked over the last 3 years. The state won't give us a budget that we know from one year to the next. And the other thing, it's like trying to run a business like this where you don't know your budget till the very end. And also, we have no idea what the kindergarten enrollment's going to be each year. So we don't know our numbers on students, and we also don't know our money numbers, which makes it real hard for us to do our job. But I think we need to start out by having Jane come in and let's look at what it's going to take to build onto Garfield to make it go to the 4-unit school. But in the meantime, a couple things Harold talked about I think are important. And one, like at COF, it's taking a step back maybe sometimes to move forward in the future. I think we might have to take a step back and spend money on modulars and buy the quad, and so we can buy the space. The idea of dividing up the rooms in Lincoln, clearly something doesn't work. The principals have all said that. Our superintendent's not recommending it, and clearly the teachers are opposed to it. So I think we might have to take a step back to move forward in the future when the economy gets better. It'd be nice if the legislatures would pass a 2-3 year plan so we can see what our budget's going to be for the coming years. But that's kind of how I feel about
worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, you've already said, we're gonna have spend $31,000 to rebuild the existing modular that the floors falling in on and all this other stuff, which I question whether that's money well spent. Best case scenario, we'd be building on to one of the buildings to readjust for equity there.
But that's not happening next year.
But that's not gonna happen in the next 6 months. And in the next 6 months is when we're gonna need to have something decided. Am I understanding it correct, Joe? So if that's the case, if worst case and best case are neither one suitable options, then in my own mind, I'm thinking we should go with the quad.
That's the way I'm leaning too, but I agree, we can, and again, we're doing what Harold suggested, and that's that we've asked that we don't vote the same meeting we discussed, and this is about the third meeting in a row we've discussed this. We've been getting input from the public, and I would like to address Ms. Howard, your letter to us. It's not that we're not looking for your input at all. I mean, it kind of said, why don't you ask us? We do all have USD emails, and we have my home phone number and cell phones listed. Please call with input. We are asking for public input on this, and so we're happy to receive it. That was never an idea that we said we were going forward with, was to divide up Lincoln. It was thrown out as a possible idea. We owe it as a responsibility to to put the kids' interest first, I think, is foremost goal of every one of us. But we also, as elected officials, have a responsibility to the taxpayer to try to make the most with the taxpayer dollar. So we're just trying to do its best and explore all options. And so thank you for bringing it to our attention. But we have been working, just so you know, we weren't keeping you in the dark. Mr. Robinson's been here at all the meetings. We have been working through him and through the other administrators to try to get the best ideas. We just want to explore everything, so when we make a decision to buy a quad and buy another trailer, we can say that it was the best option given the reality we're in. So,
but even along those lines, if we were to go back and go ahead and purchase a quad, that's not, like you said, that may be the step back to move the step forward, because that may get us the bridge to, this is further enhancing the plan.
Yeah, the public at some point is going to have to step up and say, we don't want our kids being taught in trailers, and we're going to approve a bond issue to add on to a school to make it nice.
And at the present time, quite frankly, we could be looking at tax increases here in the next year, federally, state-wise as well. So we have to deal with what we've got.
And by the same token, I know as principals, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for most of the staff here, we don't want that to be a permanent situation either, where we're teaching.
No one does.
Yeah.
And I think we're all feeling the same way, that yes, it's a step back, but we've got some serious equity issues as far as space and as far as access to technology and some things like that, that we want to make it as equal for everybody. You know, I've been very fortunate to work with both schools. Moving those group rooms is a serious disservice to that building, and leaving us with no space is a serious disservice to Eugene Field. So it's a catch-22, and it's a hard decision to make, but we're in the same boat. We don't want this to be a permanent situation either, and we're anxious to have Jane come back and look at some long-range planning. And
Can't we make a really pretty building like ORC and get in the national magazine?
Your tax dollars at work.
Well,
How many would you like to contribute?
and Jane was involved in that
I read
one,
both
too.
the administrators that submitted your letters, but your recommendation is for the quad at Eugene Field, correct?
we need more space.
And that's your recommendation as well, given the situation?
That would-
Teacher and administrator both?
That would give them, right now they really struggle with title reading space. I mean, they're on the stage, special ed. I mean, there's just a whole gamut of things. And as they get into MTSS and all the tier 2 interventions, tier 3 interventions, they really don't have a place to go. I mean, and that, whether we use it for a classroom or not, which it just depends. I know Shannon and I talked today about the numbers she had call about kindergarten roundup. And the numbers right now, you never know. I mean, they can surprise us. Oh, you are high. Okay, so it's just honestly, we don't know till after that date, and then we have to use this formula that's usually pretty accurate on what we can anticipate having at the beginning of the year to know where we are with the number of kindergarten sections.
In terms of equity, is Lincoln the only one that has group rooms? Does Garfield have a group room? And,
No.
and obviously Eugene Field does not. So,
And you know, going back to what Dean just said, he and I had spoke today, and I had spoke to Patty Watkins, my secretary, just to talk about, we're sitting at getting close to 300 now, and I said to her, I said, I bet your numbers haven't been quite this big in a while. And she says, you know, for as long as I've been here, I remember it being around 320 at one point. She said, but at that point, we had one secretary, we had one counselor, we had one Title I person, we had
we looking at tents for MTSS and the other two buildings?
Garfield's making it work. You're making it work right now, though, in Garfield, you have the space, it's okay, I mean,
Yes, I would say we're not in hallways, we're, using whatever space we do have available, and we are using every space every moment of the day.
one more question for Ms. Fanning. So right now you have the modular, 2 classrooms in modular, right? I mean, the option of pulling over the TAP modular and refurbishing the other one, that give the 4 classrooms, right? But probably obviously not as appealing of a fix, but it would give you the 4 classrooms.
As long as the floor's not falling down.
Okay.
I don't think, I personally would rather have the quad
Sure.
than all in one building. That really is,
Okay.
as long as I have the extra space and it's up to par.
For my preference, I'd most be interested in a comparison between the refurbish of the one that's there and bringing the TAP over and refurbishing it versus the quad. Because like we said, we're obviously not going to get bricks and mortar up in time, and it doesn't look like there's just refurbishing the one. It doesn't look like that's going to be a workable
Well, and one of the
solution.
things that concerns me is that you've got the mobile lab on the cart, but you don't have the bandwidth Wi-Fi wise for your classrooms to be able to use it correctly. And if that's the case, then that's an equity issue in terms of technology.
What's happening with the wireless?
What we have right now in that building is just a wireless, like your Netgear thing, because we don't have wireless within the buildings. That's something we're looking at, but that's very expensive.
Andy looks at right away in all
Are
the
you
buildings.
wanting a motion?
No, this is just a discussion. We're not asking for a motion. I don't think of this
Oh,
being
no.
correct.
Oh, no.
I hope, though, as we move forward with the architecture, maybe groups like FOOP can get involved with helping give community input on what they want to see as far as, we tried that when I first came on the board before the economy tanked. That's when we were looking at our facility master plans, and we didn't get a lot of input from the community. We tried to hold, I remember we went to the soap scrimmage at the football game, and very few people stopped by to talk to us. We had an open house, and very few people showed up. So I hope that some groups like what you formed and other people can give us input to what direction they'd like to see the district go in the future towards accommodating the expansion that we're having.
Well, and one of the things that always amazes me when you get into talking about facilities is we still have a component in our community that think, well, it was fine when I went to school. Why do they have to have any better now? And it's not so much, is the building as glamorous and new and up to date as it could be technology-wise? It's none of those kinds of issues. It's the simple fact that our ways of teaching demand more space. It's that simple. We can go back to 1965, which is when some of these buildings were built, but we won't be serving our kids because that type of instruction isn't serviceable anymore due to the nature of our economy and everything else that's going on.
How are they going to compete in a modern world?
Exactly. And when we've got as many different differentiated instructional needs, that's a buzzword, but it's one that we're faced with. Differences in levels, because the kids that are coming to us today are coming to us with more needs, more issues, all those kinds of things, in and out in terms of transiency. They're all here. In as many ways as we don't like to think about it, we're closer to a Kansas City, Kansas type environment than we are Overland Park.
Does anyone else have anything else on this?
Where from here is my question, because they need some kind of answer pretty soon.
Well, I think we're going to wait, by the next meeting, we should have roundup numbers.
Yeah,
shouldn't
we'll have more numbers and do the comparisons on everything, but that's a big key is what we get for kindergarten roundup, so.
Well, and I'm like Dennis in that I would like to have you go ahead and give us the, regardless of the numbers, Eugene Field is short and cramped for space.
Right.
They're missing a lab because they don't have the bandwidth to be able to handle that situation. So I would like to see us know how we're going to accommodate that deficit plus the existing floorless building.
We have,
That's a bare minimum. I think we've got to be able to know what's the most cost-effective way to handle that.
Okay.
Does anyone else have anything?
And we need to know not what we think the city's going to do, but we need definite numbers from what the city.
Yeah.
Because we have too many city surprises. And so we need to know exactly what each thing is going to cost.
Yeah, I think we're just looking at the permit, dollar of the permit. We won't have to get into the retention ponds and those things if we just do the quad or two.
You have that in writing from the city.
We
With
will,
a drop of blood.
but yeah. So,
$100,000 turn lanes teaches
Yeah.
a few things.
All right. Moving on to 5.02, approve the ORC board representative for USD 290.
I saw the letter from Jeff, and I thought he's done a good job.
I'd like to
Marge,
make a motion.
I'd move that we appoint
Yeah.
Jeff Curry to
Second.
another term on the ORC board.
Second.
It's been moved by Dennis, seconded by Susan, that we appoint Jeff Curry to remain on the position as the ORC board rep for USD 290. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. 5.03, take action on the USD 290 class size guidelines.
these are guidelines that we sat down and went through with principals and open to discussion here, but kindergarten through first grade, desirable 18, max 22, and I know we hit these, I mean, this isn't policy, but again, guidelines. Second and third grade, you can see 20 to 23, fourth and fifth, 22 to 25, as in 6 through 8, 9 through 12. And then for each class size over 25 students, and that would be elementary up being over 25, kindergarten, all of those, the board would consider providing extra support, whether that be a building aid, splitting the class or something. Again, adopting these as guidelines, I think then there's no doubt of where we stand and what we want. Input on the numbers and philosophy about over 25, we would consider providing extra support of some kind.
Is that cross-curricular? Like the
Well,
6
you
through
would
8,
have
9 through
to,
12?
obviously, band, PE, some of those you would, I mean, you would hope you'd have more than 25 in band and those things.
That's what I'm saying. Would that be cross-curricular? Would that, I mean, in the case where you've got 40 or 50 in band or PE, would you have an aid in there, or would you?
No, not unless we had to, and that was the thing to do, but no. Yeah.
What about programs in the high school that's only got 2 or 5? Are we gonna look at those, or how do those fit in the average?
You know, they're not here. I don't know how many classes they have, Dennis, that are that low anymore.
Yeah, is that, we know what a maximum is. What's the minimum?
You tell me.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. What is the minimum? At what point does it make sense to not offer a class when we only got 1 or 2 taking it? In terms of cost?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of educational activity? Hard to say.
I think with, I mean, with our virtual programming, I mean, we'll be able to accommodate more of that rather than have a teacher, I mean, them sitting in class. I know we do a lot of independent studies. I mean, with the teacher, if there's 1 or 2 students. Let me find out on what our actual, the minimum, or what we have in some of the classes at the
Yeah,
high
it'd
school.
be
But
good to know.
we've gone through that when we made a bunch of the cuts, but I couldn't tell you tonight what, if we have classes with 3 or 4 or 5 kids.
It would be worth it to say, okay, if the class doesn't make 5 kids, the class isn't offered as a.
Right.
Or 10
in the
or.
schedule.
Yeah,
Or
sure.
10, 20, or whatever it is.
Community College does that.
7? Is it 7?
I can't remember what the number was, but, because I was supposed to be a
Thought it was
professor,
10.
and if you didn't hit a certain number of
Right,
students,
you
they wouldn't
didn't-
offer
it
it. It
didn't
was
work.
not cost effective for them.
Yeah.
Except there are some of those higher functioning math and science classes that do not have, you know, the amount, like 5 or 7 or whatever, but they're very important for those students.
No doubt, and those are the kind of classes that I would think would be offered through the virtual school, or, you know, with support of a teacher.
Through.
We can't always do cost effective when we talk about education.
Right, but that's a good thing, because if we have, and I know we don't, but if we had, you know, 5 kids and name an elective.
Well, Cisco or, yeah,
and
Cisco.
how many, I don't
computer
know, I
class.
mean, we may not,
It's one that comes to mind.
But yeah, I'll get that.
And then Dean, with these numbers in like 6th grades and through 12, how many do we have now that's over the 25, and is there any impact if we set that? Because sometimes people see this as a guide, but if they see 25, it becomes a new standard. Do we have any classes now that are in that 28, 29, 31? Because reading that article in Lawrence, they had a lot of classes
Right.
31 in high
You
school.
know, the concern at the high school is the classrooms. I mean, when we talk about core subjects, they don't have room physically to hold more than like 25 students. I'm not saying there isn't a couple more in those, in a couple of classes, I don't know. But the physical size of the room prohibits getting much bigger than that way we're set up now. Now, sure, PE, you know, some of those things are different. Band, vocal.
Yeah, you know, I just wondering, looking at, you know, does you have desirable size and maximum size? Would it be better, would we be better served to say minimum size and maximum size? Because desirable is anywhere in between there.
Or do you really want to put yourself in the word maximum?
No.
Maximum is very definitive. I'll yield to a wordsmith, but that, or a lawyer, that seems pretty definitive, right?
The police seem to
Maximum
think so.
is.
Well, and then,
Seem to think
so we get above that in 2 or 3 classes, but we have no room to do anything. We can't do another splitted class because we don't have any place to put the other class. And so this is saying we will do that.
Well, we would consider it,
We
and that,
consider it.
it could be an aid or something, I mean, to help that teacher, not that we would have
Not that we
split it.
I think we have
class.
to be careful about that.
So, what are your thoughts?
Now, is this what you want to recommend?
Well, this is what I was gonna recommend.
We're feeling very contrary tonight, aren't we?
But,
I would like to see Jane's input on this before we
this is where most of this came from, was
did.
from her,
Did it
yeah.
come from the administration?
Well, I know
we
back in
talked about that.
2000, Marge, we had a memo that our decision was 22 for to kindergarten and 1st grade. So that one's at the maximum. But again, I know we've had over the years since I've been on the board in 2003, we've discussed this. And I know I remember seeing before in the documents with Eisenhower, we had this chart last year. And I just haven't been able to find it on the electronic search.
I know since I've been on the board, we've had sizes of 26, 27 at Eisenhower. Especially, what was the gentleman who retired and went to Colorado?
And how does this document drive change? Or does it drive any change? Or is it?
Or is it a written representation of what we currently practice?
Well, not necessarily, I mean, some of our classes are bigger than that, but at the last meeting, you had asked about parameters of what our
Sure,
enrollment
and
guidelines
that's,
are.
therein lies the
within
reason for my
to
question, is
give
how
you-
does this drive our
I think-
change?
Could
I
we
mean, I think
line
it-
this up with this policy and see the current numbers again one more time in a spreadsheet?
I think if we have something like this, I think it helps us decide what we need to do as far as building. I mean, like, whether we need the quad or whether we need the, I mean, I think that's where it's helpful to try to keep with our class sizes within what we've said is the optimum learning environment.
So, let's just, desirable size, do you want to change that wording?
Well, you were basically saying a minimum and a maximum amount was
Yeah,
what
I
you were
would say,
asking
I
for
would
rather
call
than
it a
desirable.
desirable range, you know, minimum, maximum, but it's the desirable range. You know, what's the minimum economically feasible, what's the maximum in terms of the space you currently have? This is the desired range.
Part of what we've done is we've said we're gonna have these boundaries for our district. And now we're trying to ask that they develop class sizes based on some range. I think that's where the struggle is coming, isn't it? Now you,
What do you, as far as, you know, the numbers then in kindergarten, what's the threshold there before you would consider hiring an aide or something? I mean, any
That's
idea?
what I'm asking, and that's why, I mean, that's, at what point is it more functional to add a new section with a new teacher than to put an aide in the classroom at a kindergarten? I don't have the answer to that. I'm waiting for somebody to tell me.
The experience I've had in other districts has been that there's a number, and it's maybe not even so much the desirable size, but it's a maximum size.
Yeah?
So you have, for instance, with kindergarten, 22 was our maximum size, and we have 3 sections of 22 at Garfield. When you had to have that 23rd student enroll before we would look at adding any more aides or teachers. As the economy changed, the districts were much less likely to add a teacher. They were more likely to add an aide just because of cost. Depending upon what time of year that was, if it was August, right before school started, a lot of times they left that up to the building to be able to say, do you want an aide? Or at this point, if the board's going to approve another teacher, then we would switch kids around. Parents don't like to switch kids and schools don't like to switch kids in the middle of the year. So you have, at least if you have a maximum number, we're looking at, as a board, we're deciding as a district, this is where we want to try to keep our class sizes. And then we know as administrators what we can do when we do have new kids moving in. I think that's something we're trying to grapple with. When we have new kids moving in, and we're really trying to keep them, the kids who are Garfield, we're trying to keep them at Garfield, even though Eugene Field might have a few extra spaces, we're trying to keep them within that district. If we had a guideline to follow, it would be much easier for us to have the backbone to be able to say, we're really trying to keep our sizes at this with our class sizes. This is our district guideline. Therefore, we need to have you go to Eugene Field. As numbers open up, we may be able to move you.
Right.
And I guess that's that's a twofold argument. You've got the maximum size of number of kids in a classroom, but we've got a maximum number of classrooms available.
Right. Right.
And therefore,
So then you look at the aid helping out those classrooms because you have larger class sizes, and especially with kindergarten, first grade, you have kids who are much less able to be independent.
Yeah,
so
you
that's
can-
where you need those extra hands, and that's where that aid would come in to play.
And I've had concerns raised by parents who are trying to consider where they're gonna start their kids, and they don't want their kids to have to move around, and so they're actually looking more at going to Sacred Heart, and I know their enrollment is up higher than it's been, just because they want to have some sense that they're gonna be settled and that they're gonna be able to go K through 6 or K through 5, until they go to 6, I mean.
So in the districts you've been in before, they had a maximum size, they didn't have the desirable?
They
or-
didn't have a desirable size, they just had a maximum size of the number that, and then you had to be one over that maximum size before they would look at doing any type of.
makes sense to me.
I don't think there's any point in doing a minimum thing right now, because that's not really part of this discussion, and that is certainly never going to apply to a grade school class.
No, it's not going to apply in
It's
grade
only
school.
for high school.
One of the discussions, Dean, we did a nice report that's dated here January 31st, 2011, that looked at average classroom size. I don't know if you remember that report. That's very helpful, because if we go down now and look at it, and again, things have changed since January, and look of 2011, January 30th, 2011, our average kindergarten per room average was 17.4, first grade 18.5, 20.9 in second. It would be nice, because in third grade was 19.1. It would be nice to see the same report with our standards, because I think Dr. Kraus gave us some numbers last year before the Eisenhower closed that DeSoto was like 18 to 21, Olathe was 22 to 23 for kindergarten, first grade. And what was Blue Valley? Weren't you at Blue Valley?
Yeah.
What were their ranges?
Kindergarten, first grade, second grade was 23. Third and fourth was 25, and fifth was 27.
And did that include an
Yeah, they
aide?
have 28.
In the basic classroom of 23, was that a teacher plus 23?
Yes. And the kindergartens always had 23.
And did they have an aide at that time?
No, and it was quite a problem.
Okay.
I would
And
say
so,
it was something that came up every.
so I'm just asking the facts. I'm a facts person. Tonight, I'm sorry, but when we throw numbers out left and right, and I think you worked at Blue Valley, and I think you probably saw some of their board members, they were pretty specific on spreadsheets and numbers, correct? Pam Robinson and all them, Lori Heisel, And all I'm asking is this report in January 30th was very exact. It had the number of units. It's a very valuable tool. And all I'm asking for as a board member is to see this tool in actuality and compare it to our other standards so we can actually make an informed decision. That's all I'm asking.
Well, and if you take that one step further, at Eugene Field, can a kindergarten class handle 22 kids in that building?
Right now, we have 21.
Can you handle another kid? Is there physical space to put one more kid in there?
Maybe in case we're larger than the other two. The other two are.
But that affects some of our decision process.
That's what I'm saying. That affects the decision. So if the largest physical space you can handle is 21 kids, a maximum size of 22 doesn't make sense. And quite frankly, I'd rather see that being built around the smallest average space so that we know, okay, in worst case scenario, we're going to have a minimum of 21 kids in the classroom across the district in all of the kindergartens. We have a little extra space in the Lincoln and Garfield classroom, so maybe we can fudge there at the worst case scenario. But look, this is the physical restraint of what we got. Let's say we've decided all of a sudden that we don't have the money to buy anything other than just to restore the two-room modular we got. How would you restructure then? Stack them like sardines.
There'd be a lot of kids moving.
I mean,
But I
let's
look at
deal
Blue-
with the physical realities of where we are.
But I look at Blue Valley too. If they're comfortable with one of the cutting-edge school districts where money is no limit, then you've got 23 as a standard, and that's been effective because their results are fairly good up there at Blue Valley. So I'm just saying if we could do the spreadsheet, that'd be very helpful.
I think the other thing when you start comparing us to Blue Valley, though, you got in mind too, is the needs of the students coming.
I was going to say, I think you'd be
I
better off
understand.
checking out the
But
class
look at
sizes
Lawrence,
from
though.
KCK.
Lawrence has higher numbers, and they have some of the same demographics and social issues that we do. I'm just asking, what is our decision process in this?
And I guess the other thing I would mention with the chart that's up there is the chart you referred to earlier that Brian showed last year was something we referred back to when we were putting these numbers together.
But I like that sheet on January 30th, 2011. That's actual numbers that's in a very graphic, visual format.
Well, and I guess part of my lack of comfortability is just the fact that we have three very different schools in the elementaries. We talk about not quite having equity. We don't really have equity.
No.
We have very different schools, and so whatever number we pick here, Ms. Fanning can just look at us and say, yeah, really, you want me to fit 26 where?
Do you want us
You know,
to divide it up by each elementary school?
I think it's, yeah, because we got to have the reality of where we are at and what
And,
physically we've got space for.
What do we do when we meet that maximum and we have
Right.
2 or 3 more kids enroll?
Right.
Where do they go?
That's.
They need to go
that's-
somewhere.
Right. That's the
And we
issue.
run into that. I
Daily,
enrolled
probably.
4 or 5 today again. So, it's, everything we talk about, it can't be black and white.
Right,
That's why
and
they're
that's-
guidelines.
And that's my
And,
thing.
So were all three principals involved in putting these numbers together, Dean?
Mhm.
Okay, that's why,
all-
that was
So-
part of, okay.
And what we,
I'd encourage you to leave the desirable size category in there. That's stating your philosophy that you consider smaller class size important. And I'm, in the fuzzy recesses of my mind, I remember kindergarten teachers saying that there's
18 is a good number.
between 18 kids and 22 kids.
Yeah.
So, it's not an action thing, the desirable size, that's just your hope and dream. But I think you're stating as a board that smaller class size is important to this district. And the maximum size you can wrestle over. But I think it's good to have those desirable sizes in there because
And again, the recommendation, these are guidelines, these are not, we're set in stone, we can't break them, or we're
Right.
violating school policy. It's just what we're hoping to accomplish to guide us in building for the future as far as space needs, correct?
right.
So
I think the other thing to always keep in mind when we're talking about class sizes, especially with that K-1 size, is very often those kids are not identified with whatever needs that they have. So you have kids coming in, and there's a whole process that we go through in order for those kids to be identified and to be able to receive the extra services that they need and for those teachers, that's a difficult thing when you've got some kids coming in with some possible high needs if your class sizes are large.
So in the interest of, so maybe what we ought to do is go ahead and accept this as guideline and then have the caveat that based on space or based on who presents and all that, it may need to change.
Well, it's on as an action item, but I'm hearing from
That's
Dennis,
what
he'd
I'm-
like to have a little more information.
That's okay. I mean, if the board wants to make a motion, you go ahead. I mean,
It's an action item, so if anyone wants to make a motion, we will entertain a motion. If not, we can table it till we get some more information.
All right, well,
I guess there's no motion. I guess we just ask that, Dean, if you can
Bring it
maybe
back next
bring back the
time.
numbers of what we
Yeah.
actually have right now, what our actual class averages are, so we can look at
Yeah.
that.
I was considering making a motion to make the desirable size the maximum size, but I think I'll wait.
Do you want it to be by building?
I think it needs to be a discussion. What I'm just looking at is, can I see them in what their averages is now, what the standard is, and how that might play out? Just as, like a budget.
I see
I
that.
think if you go by building, you run the risk of creating an equity issue.
That's what I'm
Because
concerned about.
if you have 18 in a kindergarten class at Eugene Field, but you've got 22 in Lincoln and Garfield, you're gonna have the higher risk in those larger classes of having unidentified special needs. And I think
I mean,
then you're coping. Whereas if they're the same size, then everybody's coping at least on the same level.
Well, I mean, we try to, that's a big issue, that how many students with IEPs we have come in
Yeah.
and where they're placed, and and we get more and more all the time, so we try to even that out as much as we can,
Yeah.
and that may be busing somebody.
And if you got disparity in
Place
class
to-
size, then that makes that more difficult to even out.
So, all right, we will do that.
all right, moving on to item 6, executive session for negotiations.
I gotta find it first, just a minute.
I'm gonna do it. I move the board go into executive section for the purpose of discussing personnel matters. Oop, the wrong one.
10 minutes.
The executive session for discussing non-related employee-employer negotiations, whether or not Constellation or representative, the representatives of the body of the board go and return the open meeting at 9:05 o'clock in this room. The executive session is required to protect the district's right to confidentiality, negotiation position, and the public interest.
second, third.
It's been moved by Dennis, seconded by David, that we go into executive session for negotiations till, you said 9:05, correct?
Yeah.
9:05 o'clock PM. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
It's irritating.
Did you try to reset me so I can try to log on while I'm here?
Make a motion, we come back into open session.
Second?
Been moved by Susan, seconded by Marge, that we return to open session. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Skipping 8 or 7.01, going to 8. 8.01 is approved personnel.
So moved?
Second.
Moved by Susan, seconded by David, that we approve the personnel report for this meeting. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. 9.01, announcements.
CAC tomorrow, and I believe, oh, that's Susan at 4. I said
And
it
I
was Brian.
can't.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Remember, I told you I couldn't do that
Right.
one. I'm so sorry.
Geez, we don't have, I think I went over everything. Chamber breakfast, if anybody's interested, at 7:15 on Thursday, the 29th.
So is our chamber director moving out of town?
Yes,
Yeah, that would.
He's actually gonna move to Junction City.
yeah.
That's what I've heard.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, there could be a lot of action with the new biotech moving in if it ever gets done up there.
could be a lot, yeah. The one thing, Saturday, April 9th, or April 7th, we will have the last legislative coffee. And I believe all the legislators have said they would be here, so that'll be an interesting one, and
Have you heard any more on the Senate district for Senator King?
I haven't, Dennis. I don't know where they are on that. We do host the joint luncheon, city-county luncheon on April 18th here at USD 290. So if you could make it to that, that would be very good. That's all I have.
All right.
This is what I was trying to hear earlier. I was trying to read his thing on Frank Martin. It looks like he did go.